Thanks, Paul. That's a really important experience, and I'll say a few words before we turn it over to the floor. But I was in Vancouver and organizing around that at the time, and the Labour Council was very much involved in setting up the Lower Mainland Coalition for Social Justice, which had mass assemblies and met regularly, set up all kinds of working groups and committees in order to bridge that gap that exists so often between the labor movement and the social movements. And so that, exactly like you said, Paul, it was that in the moment, you had an issue that galvanized people, but it was also that we had built these networks up in different places. There was a place for the movement to go and something to push forward with. Patty, you did a lot of thanking us, but I want to say that having a Labour Council president that was willing to go out in the community and organize occupations all over the city had something to do with it. So we can hear there's actually a lot of experience about mass mobilizing with this model in the country. And there's a lot of this kind of work going on in different places, not just there's lots of people that aren't here. I mean, certainly there's the work that's being done with Solidarity Ottawa. There's some folks trying to set up or build Solidarity Halifax. You've got the Making Waves group in Windsor. You've got the We Are Oshawa group. So this organizing is being done all over the place, but I guess the real question that we have to ask is, one, how can we provide some kind of a contact network between all of this stuff that's happening so we can coordinate a little more broadly? And two, how do we figure out how to get this kind of organizing happening in places where it isn't? And one of the things that I've seen a lot is that the Labour Councils can be really central in this stuff happening. So it's good that there's a lot of folks here from Labour Councils. Maybe we can hear from how you work with other groups in your communities, or what kind of work you could do. So yeah, so much to talk about, but please get to the mic if you like to speak.
There's a lot to respond to, but I just want to choose a couple things. One of the brothers was talking about the fact that we need militant actions. Yes, we do. However, one of the strengths of what we have done in London is you draw people in at levels of activism that they're comfortable with, right? So not everybody is comfortable with taking militant direct action, and so we need to be able to invite people in where they're comfortable and at their own level. Bureaucracy and the hierarchical nature of the labor movement, we had this conversation earlier today. Absolutely agree with you. That's one of the reasons why those of us who engage in labor councils, I think, are more democratic structures. Choose where you put your activist energy very carefully, because we need all of you in for the long term. So choose very carefully where you put your energy. And I would say, absolutely the structure of the labor movement needs to change, no question. I mean, we saw that at convention. Go where you're comfortable and where you feel is most creative and what you enjoy.
We need to understand that since probably about the 1950s, the ruling class in this country has pursued a strategic policy of trying to institutionalize the labor movement, wrap us up with regulations, give us paper trails to chase down, right? Ever since really the Rand formula came in. That was a conscious decision on the part of the capitalists to try and find ways to control the labor movement. But at the same time with that comes some very important things and obligations for unions, which is representing our members. We have these grievance procedures and things that we have obligations to these people. And that creates two sort of competing tendencies within the union movement. One that drives towards action and rank and file driven struggles, and one that tends towards the more legal channels of arguing things and lobbying and so on. Now, the reality is, and this often comes up in the debate of, are you a service union or are you an activist union, and that sort of thing. The truth is we have to be both. We really do. And we have to find ways to not only balance these things, but make them work together, right? So you can try to find ways to, use structures to mobilize where you can, and where you can't, go around them. But on the question of general strikes and where I would stand now, to be clear, when you're talking about a general strike, it's always a question of the balance of forces, and it is never the leaders that decide to have a general strike, even when they call them. Okay, it is always the rank and file that decides to shut down society, and only when the people actually decide to do that will it ever happen. Okay, so we have to put these things in context. I couldn't just run out there and say general strike. I'll tell you, I wouldn't have the forces behind me to do that. I would look rather foolish. So it's not simply a question of what the leaders want to do. In principle, if we have the balance of forces, I'm in favor of overthrowing capitalism, of occupying the factories, and establishing democratic control over society by working people. But to go and shout revolution when you're not in a position to do it is rather foolish. So, I guess to answer your question, you'll have to wait and see.
When the RAND formula came in, the single biggest change was that because union stewards used to have to go around the worksite and collect dues from everyone, right? When they no longer had to do that, and the employer collected the dues through dues checkoff and then remitted them to the union, it saved a whole bunch of time. So all these resources in the union that were spent on collecting dues could now go to servicing, could go to organizing, could go to these other things. That's actually a good thing. The negative thing is that when you go and collect money from somebody, you have to answer their questions, and you have to know what's going on the shop floor. And so what we're trying to do now is move to a model where we do two things. One of them we've already launched. So one thing is trying to negotiate agreements with pattern language to have union meetings on the worksite on employer paid time. Because it's really not, it's not functional for people to try and show up to a union hall, that's a ways away on their own personal time. It's very difficult. But the key thing is this, is arming our stewards with handheld apps to go out, or even basic stuff, to go out and collect information, and not just our stewards, but also through online engagement tools, through basically, we use Nation Builder, we use a bunch of tools, to go out, and so our stewards are connecting with our members, but also when we're connecting with our members in any sense, we're asking information. So instead of collecting dues from our members, we're collecting data. And so we can make up that massive deficiency, because I think our single biggest challenge is getting back to that point where we've got enough of a two-way relationship with our membership that we're collecting that information on a regular basis. And because when you collect information, you become accountable, right? The person that you're collecting the money from knows who to go to if they've got a problem, and they can get everyone else interested to go to you, and it becomes an alienating experience when those accountability structures, which I think used to exist, have been eroded over the last 40 years.
And your comments remind me of Jane McElwee's writing. Have you read it? Yeah, so the concept of the whole worker, and exactly what you're talking about. And so I completely agree with you. We need to engage people as community members, right? And excellent points you made. Thank you.
Just a quick note as well.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's why I love labor councils, where like it's a space where, you know, we do work on sort of putting forward our specific agendas on like whatever issue is important to the day, but it's also about taking that time and, you know, through this organization to be very grounded in our community in a broad sense. Like I sort of like to refer to it as walking and chewing gum at the same time. Like we need to be able to do both for sure.
So I noticed some themes coming up that the labor movement's been talking about for about 150 years. And I don't say that facetiously. These are questions that labor has grappled with for a long time. The truth of the matter is leadership can be the key difference in certain situations. Having the right people in place to make the call can really matter. At the same time, leadership on its own doesn't do it, right? It's not about being right all the time. It's about what you can actually do and what you can build and achieve, and how do you empower the members. When Paul says the power of the labor movement isn't at the CLC and necessarily can't be, I think what we're referring to is the fact that the power of the labor movement is not 3,000 people in a room. It's millions of workers mobilizing, right? That can never be put in there. So how do we build at the base to put pressure on things to move things along? I think you see leadership move when something happens underneath it, and you see that all of the time. It's the grassroots pushing things forward that can actually bring these kind of changes. And yeah, I think we do need to develop a broad program that we can seriously arm not just the labor movement with, but with the social movements, the indigenous movement. All of these people bring the social forces of this country behind a program. That would be amazing. And that's ultimately what we need to do. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take time. A lot of people have been talking about this for a long time. And I don't know exactly how we do it. I know pulling together all of the best activists in the CLC for a discussion would help. So we've gone that far. I think at some point we need to figure out exactly what we're doing, and we need some timelines around this. For postal workers, there's a sense of urgency. We're going back to the bargaining table, and none of the issues that we were there with last year have really been resolved. All of those things are still there. We still expect them to come after us with all sorts of austerity, and then we might have to go to the wall to defend some basic things. So, we need to have that vehicle. From the postal workers' perspective, we need to have that vehicle in time for that fight. But I've also said repeatedly, COPW has never had a problem pulling together the left. Like, we know, more than any other union, when we ask for support, it's there. But I think really we've got to find a way to concretize some of those connections so that it's not reinventing the wheel at every step. But we can move from one fight to the next with a little bit of rhythm and pull this movement together. So I'm sorry I'm only speaking in broad projections, but those are the conversations that we've got to have. And I know there is that sort of network being pulled together, but there's no banner or flag yet. Right, and that's got to be a part of it. There has to be something to rally around, for sure. But I don't know whether we're at the point of declaring that.
Where I started out this evening was talking about a mechanism through which we can have some sort of national network, and that would be specifically through labor councils, for many, many reasons, but now we have a mechanism which is going to be very powerful for our Labor Council folks to get together at the national level and to challenge union leadership at the CLC at that level and be in on those conversations. So I'm just going to suggest that as a mechanism and urge all of you to be part of, if you're not already, your local Labor Council. So that's one national mechanism. Dylan Penner, I'm gonna, don't leave yes. Friends of Public Services. Yep, that's another national structure. And are we going to resume those national conference calls?
That would be great. Yeah, for a while, just for
I'm
folks who don't know,
suggesting
we're
that.
coordinating weekly Pan-Canadian conference calls with folks who are doing community organizing around saving door to door, and for folks who are interested, just get in touch. It'd be great to wrap that up again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you everyone for coming. It's been a great discussion. Leave those things on your chairs. I'll be picking them up. Thanks.